Hello coders, welcome to the first video of the two-part video series, The Tour of Web Dev with Node and React. In this first part, we'll give you an introduction to web dev and an intro to a backend framework called Node.js. We will also give a demo on creating a simple backend server using Node.js. If you have any doubts, feel free to contact us in the comment section. So without a further ado, let's get started.
Today we have a very interesting topic, a tour of web dev using Node, Express and React. So a very trending topic. So I'm Hardik Upadhyay and we have Rohit Bakolia and Sahil Bundre with us. So today's agenda is to give you an overview of how it looks like to do web dev using Node, Express and React. So don't expect that you will be an expert in 2 hours. ठीक है, मेहनत आपको खुद से करनी पड़ेगी, पर हम आपको डायरेक्शन दे सकते हैं और आपको एक ओवरऑल आइडिया आएगा कि how everything works. So we'll be making a simple web app using these tools. ठीक है, so पहले फ्रंट एंड की थोड़ी बात करते हैं. So in front end, in vanilla JavaScript, you should know at least the fundamentals and about the document object model DOM. तो हम आपको document.get element by id नहीं सिखाएंगे आज, तो हम एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि आपको बेसिक्स तो आती है जावास्क्रिप्ट की. ठीक है, so let's talk about JSON. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It is actually very famous. It is used in many places in web dev. So basically JSON is just a collection of key value pairs. Okay, और JSON यूज़ क्यों करते हैं हम लोग? Because JSON is easier for us to read and easier for machines to parse. Okay, then we have something called fetch API. Fetch API is used to fetch the resources from across the network. So इसका एक अल्टरनेटिव है Axios लाइब्रेरी जो हम आज यूज़ करने वाले हैं. So ये बेसिकली एक प्रॉमिस रिटर्न करती है. तो अगर कोई URL है सपोज और उस पर कुछ डेटा है और हमें वो डेटा फैच करना है, सो वी विल यूज़ फैच API फॉर दैट. ठीक है, एंड देन वी हैव मॉडर्न JS. तो जो ES6 वर्जन आया था जावास्क्रिप्ट का, उसमें बहुत सारी नई चीज़ें आई थी. सो समथिंग लाइक क्लासेस, फिर इम्पोर्ट एक्सपोर्ट, प्रोमिसेस, async await वगैरह बहुत सारे नए एडिशंस थे. So we'll talk about some of those topics later. तो सबसे पहले बात करते हैं REST API के बारे में. So REST stands for Representational State Transfer और REST एक्चुअली एक आर्किटेक्चरल स्टाइल है. ठीक है, तो if you want to interact between client and server over HTTP protocols, we generally follow REST API. तो REST API के बेसिकली ये दो रूल्स है. First is that you should use HTTP verbs like get, post, put or fetch and delete. So अगर आपने वेब डेवलपमेंट में थोड़ा काम किया होगा तो आपको पता होगा कि जब हम कोई वेब ऐप बनाते हैं तो उसके 4 बेसिक फंक्शंस होते हैं: क्रिएट, रीड, अपडेट, डिलीट. उसको हम CRUD बोलते हैं. So we generally call it CRUD application. So the post does the work of create, get does the work of read, put or fetch does the work of update and delete request does the work of delete. So ये हमारे HTTP verbs हो गए. तो आपको अगर REST API फॉलो करना है तो आपको ये verb का यूज़ करना पड़ेगा. और दूसरा रूल ये है कि you should follow a specific pattern for your routes और URLs. So इसका एग्जांपल मैं दे सकता हूँ कि let's say आपके पास एक बुक लिस्ट ऐप है जिसमें बुक्स की लिस्ट है और कोई बुक पर क्लिक करने पर वो बुक का डिस्प्ले पेज खुलता है. So the route for your book list should be /books. और अगर आपको कोई बुक पे क्लिक करके वो बुक की इंफॉर्मेशन डिस्प्ले करनी है तो हर एक बुक की लेट से कोई आईडी होगी. सो द राउट फॉर दैट शुड बी /books/id. So basically REST कहता है कि you should follow a specific pattern for your routes or URLs, and you should use this HTTP box. So this is all about REST API. Next, one important thing is JavaScript में और basically web development में हम frameworks और libraries की बातें बहुत करते हैं. So what are those things? So frameworks or libraries both are just pre-written code, and the difference is in the flow of the control. So basically, when you use a library, you are in charge of the flow of application. Okay, so you choose when and where to call that library. But when you use a framework, the framework is in charge of the flow. So, hello, yeah. So the framework is in charge of flow, and it provides you the places where you inject your code. So basically, फ्रेमवर्क जो होता है वो आपको एक बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर देता है जो आपको फॉलो करना पड़ता है. सो ऑब्वियसली फ्रेमवर्क गिव्स यू इजीज योर टास्क मच, और फ्रेमवर्क्स काफ़ी कुछ ऑटोमेट कर देता है. फ्रेमवर्क्स some frameworks also provide some features like authentication and stuff like that directly. whereas लाइब्रेरी में आपको खुद सब कुछ करना पड़ता है. आपको जब चाहे तब आप कॉल कर सकते हो लाइब्रेरी को. So one disadvantage of frameworks is that you don't have that much freedom as you have in library. Okay, so you are not very sure that you understand your code completely. So that's about frameworks and libraries. So फ्रंट एंड और बैक एंड के कुछ फ्रेमवर्क्स डिस्कस करते हैं. तो रिएक्ट, व्यू और एंगुलर फ्रंट एंड फ्रेमवर्क्स. एक्चुअली रिएक्ट फ्रेमवर्क नहीं है, रिएक्ट इज अ लाइब्रेरी. So React is most popular, and it's fairly easy to learn library. Then we have Vue. Vue is also gaining attraction these days, and it is easiest to learn. Angular is quite declining these days, and it is used in enterprises, and it has a steep learning curve. ठीक है, तो आज ऑब्वियसली हम React के बारे में बात करेंगे. Then we have server-side frameworks. These are all server-side languages, and then these are frameworks. So first of all, Node.js. For Node.js, we have some frameworks like Express, Adonis, and Feathers.js. तो अब फ्रेमवर्क्स में भी कोई फ्रेमवर्क लाइट वेट होते हैं, मिनिमलिस्टिक होते हैं, और कोई फ्रेमवर्क बहुत ओपिनियनेटेड होते हैं, हाई लेवल होते हैं. ठीक है, तो जैसे कि एक्सप्रेस और Feathers.js जो है वो मिनिमलिस्टिक फ्रेमवर्क्स है, और एडोनिस जो है वो हाई लेवल फ्रेमवर्क है. Similarly for PHP, Laravel is a good framework. ठीक है, वो भी एक हाई लेवल फ्रेमवर्क है. For Python, we have Django and Flask, very famous. So Django is a high level framework. Flask is low level minimalistic framework. For Java, we have Spring MVC. Java is like that old school language. ठीक है, अभी वेब डेवलपमेंट में तो कोई उसे यूज़ नहीं करता, हालांकि older enterprises still use Java, but I won't suggest learning Java for web development. आपके पास बहुत सारे better options हैं. Then we have for Ruby, we have Ruby on Rails. So whenever we talk about Ruby as server-side languages, almost every time people use Ruby on Rails as a web framework. So Ruby on Rails is very popular as a server-side framework, but the sad thing is it is also declining these days. So it's actually a very good framework, but many companies are ditching it. So yeah, but you can build apps very quickly using Ruby on Rails. And one fun fact is that the founder of Ruby on Rails is a very cool guy. So he's actually a car racer plus an entrepreneur and super cool guy. Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about client server architecture a little bit. So we can understand this by analogy of a restaurant. So let's say you go to a restaurant and you sit at the front and you order some dishes, let's say. So you are given a menu, and from that menu you select some items, and the waiter will serve you those items. So actually the waiter serves you the items. So waiter acts like a server. So you request your food items from the waiter. Waiter will go to the kitchen, your backend, and the chef will then take the items if necessary from your storage, which is database, and will make the recipe, and then waiter will take the response back to the client. So your waiter works like a server, and there's your front side of a restaurant is your client side, and your storage is your database. So ये एक एनालॉजी है जिसको हम यूज कर सकते हैं टू अंडरस्टैंड क्लाइंट सर्वर आर्किटेक्चर. So yeah, that's it. Now Rohit will explain you about Node.js.
Okay, guys, this is Rohit, and we are talking about here the Node.js and the Express.js. So the Node.js is a runtime environment for executing the JavaScript outside the browser. That means is the previously we can't run the JavaScript outside the browser. We can only run the JavaScript inside the browser. So with the help of the Node, we can run our the JavaScript inside the our operating system using the command line, like other general purpose languages. So that means it is not a framework or not a library or not a programming languages. It's just a runtime environment. And the Node.js is basically uses used to create a backend services, and every browser has their own JavaScript engine to compile the JavaScript. So the Node.js took the Chrome V8 engine to compile the JavaScript, and also it is written in C++. So and it is the asynchronous and single threaded, unlike the other languages. What that means is uh, इसको समझते हैं एक एग्जांपल से जो कि हार्दिक ने एक्सप्लेन किया था. तो अगर हम ऐसा सोचें कि कोई ऑर्डर के लिए आया, यहाँ पे कस्टमर आया, तो कस्टमर के लिए वेटर जाता है. वेटर क्या करेगा, ऑर्डर लेगा, सर्वर को देगा. तो दैट मीन्स वी आर इंटरेक्टिंग. द वेटर क्या करता है, एपीआई कह सकते हैं उसको, जो कि प्रोवाइड कर एपीआई एंड पॉइंट पे जाएगा, सर्वर को देगा, रिक्वेस्ट देगा, और सर्वर क्या करेगा कि डेटाबेस से एक्सेस करेगा. जो भी उसको करना होगा वो डेटाबेस से एक्सेस जो करेगा वो सर्वर करेगा. सो क्लाइंट साइड को कुछ पता नहीं होता कि क्या करने वाला है, वो ओनली सर्वर से इंटरेक्ट करेगा. ठीक है. और अभी क्या होता है कि जो Node.js कैसे वर्क करता है, वो बात ये है कि अगर एक नया कस्टमर आया तो उसके लिए क्या करेगा, ये अकेला वेटर हैंडल कर सकता है. क्यों? क्योंकि अभी ऐसा नहीं होगा कि हर बार हर एक रिक्वेस्ट के लिए एक एक नया वेटर आए. जो जैसा कि हर एक अदर लैंग्वेजेस में क्या होता है कि हर एक टास्क के लिए वो एक नया थ्रेड क्रिएट कर देते हैं. तो दैट मीन्स दे आर क्रिएटिंग द न्यू वेटर. तो हर एक रिक्वेस्ट के लिए अलग एक वेटर होगा जो कि रिक्वेस्ट लेगा, फिर रिक्वेस्ट सेंड करेगा सर्वर को. देन सर्वर जो होगा, जो करना हो, जो डेटाबेस एक्सेस करेगा, देन रिक्वेस्ट सेंड करेगा. तो जावास्क्रिप्ट में ऐसा नहीं होता है, वो ओनली सिंगल थ्रेडेड होता है और एसिंक्रोनस होता है. ठीक है. और दैट्स इट. So now let's talk about the npm. So when we install the Node.js, we get another thing installed with the Node.js, which is called the npm. Npm stands for the Node Package Manager. So it is used to basically install the third-party packages from the npm, and these packages gets stored in the Node modules folder automatically. And also there is another file is created, which is called package.json, in which all the dependencies are listed. And so we don't have to create this package.json manually. We can create this file using the npm init. Sahil will show you how to create it. And to install the other dependencies which are already listed in the package.json, we can use the npm install. Like when we clone any repository from the GitHub, then we will first do npm install to install all the dependencies from the our package.json. And to install the packages, so we will use the npm install and package name. To install the packages as a dev dependency, we will use the npm install -d package name. So dev dependence means it is required only in the development purpose. Uh, okay, so now let's see about what is the localhost and port. So localhost is the only host name that refers to the current computer, also known as the loopback address. So for to developing for development purpose, we will use the local host to our current machine to make the server. Also, the client is also in the same machine, and also the server is also in the same machine. So localhost has the IP address. This address is, we can use either the localhost or we can use the 127.0.0.1. And to access this localhost, we will use the ports. So why they introduce the ports? Because for the particular computer, there are multiple processes are running on that. So to use the particular task, we will use the port for that. So we will use that thing in our backend and front end. So you will get more familiar with that. So let's talk about the Express.js. So the Express is a fast and minimal web framework for Node.js. It's basically used for making the web APIs for the Node.js, and so we can make the backend services and write the APIs using the Node.js core module named as HTTP. But using that, but it makes the code more complex, and some things are not available with the HTTP. So we will use the Node Express.js, which is very light framework, and we can use very easily it. So to install this Express.js, we will use here npm install Express. So here is a basic example of the Express application. So first we need to import this thing. These modules is come from the Node modules folder. So we will store in the Express. So so we need to first instantiate this function. Then we will call it the app, and we can make any REST APIs with that. So we can make the requests like app.get, app.post, app.port, and delete all this. The first thing we will take here is the route which we want to hit. Once the route is hit, here is the second parameter is the callback function. So it's take the request and response. The request object has the URL parameters or the query string, all the HTTP headers uh, which are in the request object, and also request body. And the response is something which we will send to the front end. So the response can be sent as a plain text, or we can send the HTML file. Also, we can send the JSON, or we can render the templates. Uh, Generally, we will use the JSON to send the data as a form of JSON. So to run the Express application, we will use here the port 5000, and app.listen. What we will do it will do is it will open the port 5000 for our development purpose for this our Express application. So it will run our application to the localhost colon port 5000. And okay, so Sahil will show you the how to code our backend.
So yeah, what I've done is I've created a folder called weather backend, and here we'll start writing a server. So the first thing is we'll do npm minute. So what this does is it will ask you a few questions, and that would create a package.json file. So let's just keep these are just whatever default answers. Just give those for now. And I'll open this up in VS Code. So running npm init created a package.json file for me. So next up, I'll just create another file called index.js. So those who are not familiar with Node, you might have executed or ran JavaScript in browser before. So what Node does as a runtime is it allows you to use JavaScript as a general programming language. So I'll just demo you that. I'll just write a simple hello world. So far, what if you have written in Python some code, what you might have been doing is Python, let's say main.py or something, or if it was C or C++, you might have done GCC main.c, whatever. So that is what essentially Node allows you to do with JavaScript files. So you can directly do node index.js, and it would execute the JavaScript file. So the dependency on that we have on the browser is gone completely with Node.
So we can just treat it as if it was a general programming language. So let's start making our server. So before I'll need some dependencies. So the first thing I'll need is Express. So I'm doing npm install Express. What this would do is this would fetch all the code that is required for the Express library. If I go back to VS Code, there are two files. Sorry, there's a file and there's a directory that have been created. This node modules directory is where all the code, all the third-party code resides. You are not supposed to do any changes inside it. The npm or the node package manager will handle everything inside. So if you see, there's a folder called Express created here. This folder has all the code required that is associated with the Express package. At the same time, this Express package has other dependencies it needs. So what npm has done is it has downloaded these dependencies as well in the node modules folder. Second thing is there's this thing known as package log.json. Again, this has been created by npm and there's no need for us to edit it or something. This essentially npm uses this to keep track of what dependencies it has downloaded in node modules and what version they are on. So let's start. I'll first get Express in my code and I'll create a new Express app. Next thing what I need to do is I'll define a port. Let's say it is 5000. If this doesn't make sense what this is, it will make sense soon. Then next up what I'll do is let's do a get request for slash. So whenever a user tries to get some information on the slash route, we want to let's say initially let's just send hello world to them. So what I've done here is I've on app.get for the slash route, I'm passing this function in. So this function takes in two parameters, request and response. So request corresponds to anything that the user might request from the front end, and response is associated with anything that we want to send back to the user as a response to their query. So essentially what we are doing is in this dot get function, we are passing the second function, which tells Express how to respond when someone hits the slash route. If you find this weird, it's fine. In JavaScript, you can pass other functions in as parameters to other functions. So let's start our app. So I'll define this port before. So I'll mention that port here and write server started on. So this is a basic hello world of Express. Let's see if I've made any mistakes. Cool. So yeah, it says server started on port 5000. So if I go back to my browser and do localhost colon 5000, I get back the hello world. So that's essentially me hitting the slash out. So that's localhost 5000 slash. So it gives us back hello world. So now in this session, what we want to do is we want to create a simple weather app where on the front end side there would be a simple input box where the user would enter some city, and once they submit it, we would get the weather details of that specific city, like what the temperature is in that city. So this is what the idea is to do. So let's first do find a way to get the city from the user. What I'll do is I'll create another route over here. I'll call it /API/:city, and again the same procedure, passing a second function. Now when I do :city, what Express does is it considers this part as a separate parameter. So we can actually treat this as a variable. So I'll just print it out so you can get a better idea. So I'll print out request.params. So again, as I said before, request object is concerned with whatever request that is coming from user. So request.param stores anything that is inside the route as a parameter. So let's just print it out, and since we are supposed to send something, we'll just send city route hit. So what I need to do is I need to stop this server and again start it. So I'll do node index.js again. And now instead of 5000, if I go /API/Pune, you can see city route hit. So we are in this. So we are our API got called on this specific route. And if we see our terminal, can see that we have printed this city equals Pune over here. So essentially what has happened was when we did /API/Pune, what Express did it parameterized Pune and mapped it to city. So essentially we have this stored and we can use it in our code. So let's go a step further. What I'll do is I'll do const city is body.para request.params.city, and let's just print and let's just send this city back. So I'll stop my server again and restart it. And if I hit this again, so notice that I'm sending here localhost 5000 /API/Pune, and it's sending me you hit Pune city. Now instead, if I send Mumbai, it would give me you hit Mumbai city. So now we are successfully able to get some details through the route that the user is hitting us on. So now we can further use this city to process what city they have sent us and return back some temperature for them. So usually how this would be done is we would have a database wherein we would have a table for, let's say, one column for city name and other column for what temperature is there for that city. So but we don't, in this session, we don't want to complicate things for you. So we are gonna cheat and we are gonna make a simple object over here to save us some time and make this project a bit simpler. So I'll just map out city names to whatever temperatures we want to. So I'll just write a few city names like Pune 48, Mumbai 46, Surat 47. So I've written 3 cities now. Instead of just sending you hit city or something, we'll try to send the temperature also. So first thing what we need to check is whether the city that the user has sent is there in our database or not. So we're going to treat this as a mini database. We are not actually connecting to a real database. So if this is undefined, this means that whatever city they sent is not there with us. So we'll just send city not found or something. And if the city is there, we'll actually send the temperature. So let's see if this is fine. So I'll stop my server and restart it. Cool. So I'm hitting /API/Pune and it's sending me temperature of Pune is 48. If I hit Surat, it would give me temperature of Surat is 47. Now let's send some city which is not there. Delhi for say. So we are sending city not found. So essentially what we have is we have a way to get some details from the user as to what city we want, and in response to that we are sending back details of the temperature in that city. So this basic structure is ready with us, but let's make it more better now. So now one change that we can make is, now notice that we are doing something known as res.send everywhere. Now what this is, we are just sending a string back. Now this is not a very, like, conventionally we want to send JSON objects back. So instead of just sending a string, it's better that we send a JSON object. So it's more flexible for the front end to process it and display it to the user. So what we'll do here is we'll replace this by, instead of res.send, we'll do res.json, and that would allow us to send a JavaScript object. Let's call it, let's say, name, city, and temperature would be cities or city. So I'll restart my server again. And if I hit me, I'm getting this JSON object here. So this would be a bit more flexible once we start coding the front end part later on. So that's the first change I wanted to make. Next up, what I want to discuss is something known as HTTP status codes. So whenever there is some communication between front end and back end, there are certain status codes that are associated with each packet that is sent between the server and the client. So now, what the purpose of these status codes is to sort of uh, give some metadata regarding the packets that have been exchanged. So let's suppose you have visited some site, you visited some link which was not correct or something. So you might have occurred this message saying 404 not found or something. So that 404 is actually this status code, which tells you what something other than what the normal text data that needs to be sent. So it tells you about what the communication was and how it happened. So usually when the communication is successful, we send 200. So, and there are many other numbers. So what right now we want to send is a 404. So 404 corresponds to not found. So let's say what I need to do is, let's say I did /API/Delhi. Instead of just saying city not found, I need to actually send an error code of 404. So let's do that. Instead of doing res.send, I'll do res.status of 404. So that would let the front end know that something has gone wrong. And I'll again send a JSON saying my error message is city not found. So I'm sending more than just the data that city is not found. I'm sending the status code as well, which would help me know, which would help the front end know that something has gone wrong. So what I'll do is I'll switch off my server again and restart the application. Now let's say if I hit Delhi, I'm getting this JSON object. Nothing has changed over here, but if I open my console, you might see this message, failed to load resources. The server responded with a status of 404. So that is essentially what I want to let my front end know कि something has gone wrong. So this is done. This is done. Last thing that I need to show you guys is, let's say I hit some random route. Now I'm just displaying cannot get whatever route I hit. So I want to send a 404 here as well. So in the end, what I'll do is I'll create another app.get and I'll call it star. So star corresponds to anything that other than whatever I've defined in the top. So again, request response. So you might observe that this structure is kind of same, that you define a route and then you pass a function as a callback. So this is kind of the structure that we go for in Express apps. So instead of city not found is I'll just say invalid route. Again, this is a 404 because it's a case of not found. So if I reload it, I'm getting invalid route as a message here. So I'm letting the front end know that this route is not valid. And again, I'm setting a 404 here. Let me try the cities API. So yeah, we are returning Pune and whatever temperature it is. So right now what we have done is we have a decent enough backend created, which can be worked upon in the to hook up with a front end and get our app running. So this is it for the coding part for the server side. Before I leave, I'll show you two more things. So you might have noticed that anytime I did any changes, I had to restart the app every single time. So that's the first thing I need to change. And second thing which I want to do is I need to introduce you guys to something known as the package.json scripts. So I've opened this package.json file. There is something known as scripts over here. So this essentially allows me to write commonly used commands and map them to a certain keyword or something. So I'll give you an example of that. I'll just write start and I'll map it to node index.js. So I used to usually run node index.js over here to start my server. So now since I've mapped it to start, all I need to do is npm start, and that would start my server up. Now this might seem silly because node index.js and npm start both are like very smallish commands. So this becomes significant when you have a very large project and there are more than one commands that you need to run. So this is when writing npm scripts comes in handy. The second problem I want to address is I had to restart the server over and over again. So to fix that, I'll install another dependency. It's called nodemon. So what this does is nodemon keeps watching for any file changes that you make, and as soon as you save some file, it would restart the server on its own. So what I'll do is I'll create another script and I'll say nodemon index.js. Instead of node index.js, I'm saying nodemon index.js. Now if I come back over here and do npm run dev, now this dev corresponds to this dev which I've written here. Run essentially means I'm telling npm to run a script. So it is saying server has started on port 5000. Now, if I go back to my code and instead of hello world, let's say I write hello node. I'll save this. Notice that it said restarting due to changes, and it started my server all over again. So if I go back to my browser and hit the /route, I'm getting hello node. So this is, so npm scripts allow you to kind of automate your process. It eases you don't have to remember long commands and stuff like that. So yeah, so I'll stop my server. So our backend is complete.